Okay, so hi again.
Hi
uh,
again. Yeah.
can you say where you are now, Gianni?
Yes, I have just to adjust the volume. If not, I cannot hear you properly. Okay. Yes. I am in my house in the mountains.
Uh-huh.
So in August usually is time for holidays from the clinical work. So I'm here. Yeah.
And
And you? Where are you? Are
I
you in
am
home?
in, well, I am in my flat that I rent with my boyfriend, and earlier I met you and Jan and Michaela in in some other flat. So now I am
Okay.
living here.
Okay. But it's in Poland.
It's in Poland, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Which city?
Łódź.
Okay. Okay. So
Mhm. And
so
yeah, and I
nice to
remember
see you
that
again.
last time you were also in this place when we saw each other.
I think so because I guess it was May, so it was
Ah,
still in the lockdown.
yes.
I restarted to work in my practice in June and then in July. So I
Okay.
was in the city in Torino in June and July, but in May I was here too. Yes.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I imagine it is not that hot in the mountains there. No, it's better. Like
Because it's very hot. Where are you? Yes.
yes, yes. So I
Okay.
imagine in the mountains, like it's not like in the city because here in the city
No,
it's like
no, it's it's very different. I was in the cities these days, and it was very hot. No, here it's nice. Now it's raining even. So
wow. Okay, wow. Because I can see you are drinking water, and I thought, oh, maybe you are experiencing the same situation, but no. Uh,
no,
mm. And so your holidays started, right? Or
yes,
okay. So again, thank
yeah.
you for this time.
Yes. I'm happy to meet you again after the first meeting with Michela and Jan. You said that your idea was to have a meeting just with me. This
Yes,
was the idea.
yes, because at that former meeting we concentrated on your cooperation, uh,
Yeah.
all three of you, and your cooperation and your friendship, if I may
Yes.
say so. Also, and now I would like to ask you more about you as a person, and if
Okay.
you could describe yourself a bit, like in terms of qualities, in terms of values and passions, not as a Gestalt therapist, but as a human being.
Okay. Well, uh, I it's not a very easy task, but I could start from where I am in this moment, that is in the mountains. So this is one of the interests and passions in my life.
Yeah.
And I was born in the mountains, so probably there is something in my genes
Mhm.
and in my first experiences in my life as a child.
Mhm.
So for me, to live in a city is always to be outside my, let's say, my environment.
Mhm.
It's so
Mhm.
I feel rooted and I feel in my environment when I am in the mountains. So,
Mhm.
and probably this is connected not only with the history of the family and of the genes, but probably this is also transferring to me some values
Mhm.
that have the that you have to have some values in order to survive in the hard environment of the mountains. So the sense of community, for instance, is one of the values,
Mhm.
and at the same time, the need to, let's say, to count on your own energies. So
Mhm.
there is both the value of the individual, but never without the community, because you cannot survive without the community. So this is part probably of the background of my values also.
Mhm.
I can recognize this.
Mhm.
Yes.
And what about nature itself? I mean, like contrary to urban areas, I can definitely relate to that. My family also, I mean, is coming from the mountains, and they are mountaineers, as
Yeah.
they call here. So, do you feel also this kind of relationship with nature? You could say, or
Absolutely, absolutely. This is one of the main points, that the first, let's say, master is nature,
uh-huh.
and with the rhythm of the time, of the seasons, and the need to respect and to stay in connection with the nature in order to support the nature and to be supported by the nature.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obvious, it's immediate to feel that I am part of something that is wider
Mm-hmm.
and that was there before me and will be there after me. So there is something that is wider in space and time, in depth,
Mm-hmm.
in wisdom also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is another part of the basic values. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh, and what else? Any other values that come to with that?
Let's say what I'm saying is true today, and it has been true for many years now. But when I was adolescent, the main wish I had, it was to go away from the from this narrow corner in the world. So the main wish at the time was to run away, to discover the world, to go out of the traditions that I learned from the family. So this it was what I was telling was, it is about a stage in my life, but there were other stages,
Mm-hmm.
and so I had, let's say, the chance to go away, to meet other cultures, and to, I would say that even just to go to the city where I studied, that is Torino, that is not far away, it's 50 kilometers, but there was already another language, there was already another vision of the world, completely different. So I had this experience of moving, of not many kilometers from where I was born and living, and it was already an immigration.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I can, yeah, I understand. Yes, I wanted to resonate after you said that about nature. Oh, but haven't you got this period in your life when you didn't experience it this way? That you were more driven to the city and to other cultures, and yeah. So this is what you said basically, but I remember it was not until last year that when I found myself again in the mountains, which is, I mean, I am often there, but I don't know why. But I felt okay, as you said, that there is this rootedness. It was an amazing sensation. I don't know how to call it. So
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes, yes. It was like a way to, in the last years, it is a way to recognize my roots more,
Uh-huh.
to need my roots more.
Uh-huh.
But after a time, that was a long time, where the wish was to traveling into the world, to just to meet other people, to know how the world is, and and now it's different.
Mhm.
Now it's different.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm. And still about you as a person who shaped you as a person, who made you the way you are describing yourself now. What circumstances, what specific people? Um,
Well, I guess that this background in my childhood and adolescence provided me a good enough ground in order to move from here and to jump into the world.
mhm,
And let's say, and to try some ways that were not already present in my family. So I was during my adolescence, I moved very very intensively away from the traditions and from the yes, from the culture also of my family. And in that time, I met some people, especially professors in the high school, that influenced me a lot. I remember my professor of philosophy, my professor of religion, especially. And at the time, it was the late 70s, early 80s, yes. With some friends of the high school, we decided to create, when I was 18, to create a kind of community. Let's say we create a cooperative that is a legal entity in Italy in order to work. Mm-hmm. So we created by nothing, without any money, but we created such a cooperative. We started to cultivate the fruits, little fruits, red and black little fruits. We started to live together. We started to include in the cooperative people who were disabled, physically or mentally. And so when I was studying medicine, we were living in a kind of community and working together. And I think it was something that impacted very much my way of thinking in terms of the need of community. It oriented me a lot towards social values, also cultural differences, because we were very different in that moment. Also, how to survive in an environment that was not very welcoming, because during the late 70s, let's say early 80s, to start the production of organic food, organic marmalade, was absolutely weird. It's not like nowadays to think in terms of eco-sustainability and of organic food was completely, it was a bit crazy, let's say. And I remember that when we were going to the markets to sell our marmalades, it was we were really the last of the social chain. Everyone was before, and we were the last in having the right to present our products. So it was, but we were crazy enough to go on. And so we created a wonderful experience there. Mm-hmm. Then after being chairing the cooperative for the first 6 years, yes, I finished my study in medicine. So I decided to go more towards medicine than continue there. But the cooperative continued, and nowadays that it's almost 40 years that is created, is one of the biggest producers of organic fruits and marmalade in Italy. So crazy enough to become true.
Amazing.
It is completely out from my line of becoming a psychotherapist, but it's I think it's embedded in my way of considering, let's say, of having to pay attention, let's say, to the organizations or to the communities, and not only to the individual work. I guess that this is part of what supported and also pushed me in being committed in many organizations in psychotherapy too, later on. Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
So this was an important experience, yes.
Imagine, just to cut into, because yeah, maybe you would like to add something more that came afterwards, but how come was it possible, I mean, to create this cooperative? I mean, like, how do you understand this in terms of socio-cultural I don't know, attitude or changes in those times? You said end of 70s, beginning of 80s, yes?
Yes, we founded legally the cooperative in 83.
83.
So we were 19 at the time. Yes,
Uh-huh.
we, because we were a group of
How many?
friends.
How many people?
Well, we were basically 7 or 8,
Uh-huh.
and then there were some um not directly involved friends that were part of the project too. But we were 7 or 8.
But do you consider it as a kind of manifestation of, I don't know, he, some values like, I don't know, freedom, independence?
Well, we were all oriented to the left, very left wing at
Yes.
the time. So there
Yeah.
were between us or strong Marxists or anarchists,
Okay.
or so that there were political values. Then there was a vision how to live, and it was on, let's say, on the wave of the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
To create communities more than to do the, let's say, the bourgeois way of life that was prepared for everyone. So we really, our parents were quite worried about that, because we were serious, we did it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but let's say we all were also studying at the time. We were students at the university in different directions. So, and then some of the founders, a couple, 3, remained inside and continued to work, and now they are working there for 40 years. Yes.
Successful.
So, yes, it was a successful project against let's say all the expectation that people may have, but it was full of energy, that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah, interesting because well, in Poland at that time it was a different situation. Of course, the spirit was more or less, I mean, no, in some circles maybe yes, of course, pro-Marxist and so on, but generally under this regime of ours, it was, you know, difficult to differentiate.
Yes,
Yeah,
it was the time of Jaruzelski, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And
And then after some years, Valweza
yeah,
arrived, I guess.
exactly. At
Yes.
this turn of the 89, so this was something. This was something new. But I guess we didn't. I mean, this generation didn't experience something like you are describing now. So
Mhm.
this is interesting for me. I associated with it, this idea with leftists when you said that, but generally I am not familiar with, I mean, with people who were there at that time. Even stories from the US are more familiar to me, you know,
Oh, yes.
because of media, mass media and so on of the
Yes.
70s. So it's
Yes.
interesting, and I imagine, wow, what an experience. Yeah.
Well, let's say that it was not exactly on the wave of the 70s, because the early 80s,
Yeah.
it was a kind of reaction against the individualism that was coming back after the big wave of the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
So we started that project, I would say, on the ground of not letting all these ideas and movements and hopes for us and for the humankind, let's say, not to let this dropping out. So it was a kind of,
Wow.
let's put this real, even though the wave is, let's say, passing already.
Huh?
It was
Wow.
more or less that time, yes.
Now it sounds even more interesting, but yeah, but let's go on, because of course I am interested in those, you know,
Okay.
field socio-cultural aspects.
I know that you are.
Yeah, yeah, I need to. Yeah. So, and you said that already a bit when we met, 4 of us, but your beginnings with Gestalt therapy was like, yeah, maybe, well, in fact, sorry, step back. maybe you want to add someone else or some other circumstances that influenced you as a person, and maybe in so doing there were some Gestalt therapist or maybe not, but you somehow stopped at that moment of the end of your studies, and I wonder what happened there.
You mean if I can recognize now some other influences in that time?
Yes, yeah, until now.
Well, at that time for sure, another big influence was the studying of philosophy. I met a professor in the high school that influenced me a lot in the passion towards philosophy, just that. And so I studied a lot in that direction, and this I think influenced me in my way of thinking, of being curious, also in seeing that you can have very different perspective and all of them can have a value. So this was impacting me really a lot. I guess this is another background. And I was absolutely convinced to study philosophy at the university until, I guess, 15 days before I go to the secretary and I enrolled in medicine. I didn't study philosophy because my girlfriend said, well, but why you don't consider medicine? And I said, because it's too bourgeois to be a medical doctor. And she said, well, I think there are many ways of being a medical doctor, but it's up to you. And then, so this opened the possibility to consider this without refusing it a priori, let's say. And I didn't study philosophy because the possibility of working afterwards was to teach, mainly to teach in the high school. And I was afraid to repeat and repeat and repeat until I would be bored from all the philosophy. So I decided to go, and I enrolled in medical school with the clear decision to do psychiatry as a specialization. So I was oriented in that way. And then, yeah, and then I was influenced quite a lot when I was studying medicine. It was the second part of the 80s, yes, and it was the moment where culturally a new vision of psychosomatic was emerging. Let's say it was the decade where many research were underlying the interconnection and dialogue between different big systems like endocrine, immune system, nervous system. So it was this was the growing edge, let's say, one of the growing edge in medicine at that time. So I was amazed by that, and I had the chance to know and to collaborate for some years with Henri Laborie, that influenced me a lot. Henri Laborie was the one who discovered the first antipsychotic, that is haloperidol. He was a very original and brilliant man. He did all of his life, he did research, very successful research, without any grant from the state. He was just selling his discoveries mainly his discoveries on new drugs. And to study and to work with him, to do research with him, was very impacting to me. It was the one who developed the idea of he called inhibition de l'action. It's a situation of impossibility to act, let's say, to acting. And all the work on the stress that arises from the condition of impotence was very, very interesting. I worked with him in going often to Paris And then by doing the first research connected with his study on humans. So in 1989, we went in Africa to test his idea on a medical trial with people that were crazy, to crossing the desert in order to be checked before and after. But it was very interesting. So this part that it was, let's say, a part that introduced me to a kind of holism of considering human being as a whole. It was, and very sensitive to the condition in the environment. Was a good introduction for what I learned later on as a psychotherapist also, yes. So this is another important influence.
If you could continue
Okay.
next, because it's all interesting. I don't want us to get straightforwardly to Gestalt therapy, because you mentioned more or less the basis at the first interview, and I wanted to hear more about your, what your background, which is new to me. So
yes, Henri Laborie was one of the thinker who was connecting a lot of society with individuals. I don't know if you have watched the movie Mon Oncle d'Amérique. That is a movie made by Alain Resnais on the ideas of Henri Laborie. And there is also Henri Laborie in the movie explaining his experiment. It's one of the crazy movie of Alain Resnais. And I'm realizing that I'm using this word crazy in many of my influences. And this is something very important to me. I'm realizing probably right now that there is a kind of door for freedom in the craziness. Let's say what seems crazy sometimes is just new. That's it. Yeah. So I had many influences from crazy people. Yes.
Yeah. And I will check this Henri Laborie.
Henri Laborie, Laborite.
I found him. Okay. Ever heard of him before, but now when you say, okay, Henri Laborie.
He's very well known in France, not so much abroad. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And Door to Freedom by Craziness. It sounds a bit like Fromm's idea, Eric Fromm's idea. I don't know. I somehow, because I always like him. I don't know, from Frankfurt School. I admire his ideas the most. So I had that kind of.
Yes, he was one of the thinkers who influenced me in my adolescence, indeed.
Okay.
Yes, I think I have read, in those years, I think I have read everything by Fromm.
You're welcome.
I can relate, yes.
And what's next? What came next on your path before, or maybe already on Gestalt, and who impacted you? What was impactful?
Well, then I arrived to the specialization in psychiatry. That let's say I found very clearly that the psychiatry that I was learning in the specialization was a real narrow perspective. I mean, I did my specialization in 89, 93 as a psychiatrist, and it was the DSM was just arrived in Italy, translated, applied, so everything was clear and solved. And it was at the same time very poor, very poor. And here there is another big influence, one of the main influence. I guess that is something that is producing fruits in these years, because the specialization in psychiatry was oriented to DSM and medical treatment. And there was professor with an optional course that was one of the, I had really the chance to meet him, one of the main representative of phenomenological psychiatry in Italy. He is 90 this year, so, and he's still writing. Wow. I don't know how many books per year. His name is Eugenio Borgna, and you can check Eugenio Borgna. Is a very interesting man too. And he opened to me and also to Michela, because she also was a student of him, he opened this incredible landscape where there is much more than the DSM and the medical treatment. There is the person, there is the experience of people, there is the experience of the suffering. That is something that you cannot put in 2 dimensions like in the DSM. It's something that is profound, is deep, is open, is never ending to understand. So it was really a huge discovery. And this has impacted me a lot. I guess that on this background, I could open the pathways in psychopathology in Gestalt therapy, because I had this kind of experience in psychopathology from the phenomenological point of view. And when I entered in Gestalt therapy, I was very surprised that, okay, but nobody is telling nothing specific about panic attacks from Gestalt therapy point of view. This was my thesis in specialization in Gestalt therapy. So I was surprised that there was not a real exploration of the kind of suffering. That, of course, I can understand very well. It was also an historical product of the development of Gestalt therapy and of many other modalities. At the same time, I had the chance, having that background, to feel this kind of lack of exploration in Gestalt therapy. So it was maybe one of the most interesting issues for me as a Gestalt therapy was to open this exploration in psychopathology from our point of view. Yeah.
Now it's more clear to me. Okay, that all what you've been doing now within Gestalt therapy world has this background there. I mean, a few years back. I mean, yes. Not really from this Gestalt, from the outside, in fact.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Obviously, you relate to those phenomenological psychiatrists these days, contemporary, like younger than this Eugenio Borgna. Yes. But your interest started earlier, very much earlier.
Yes, absolutely. And what I liked and I like is that it's not that I'm taking something from the phenomenological tradition and put inside Gestalt therapy, neither vice versa. It seems to me a new combination, because the phenomenological psychopathology has a lot of experience in understanding the suffering, the way of experiencing the suffering. And Gestalt therapy brought something that is not present in the phenomenological psychopathology, that is the field theory idea, mainly. So when you have a lot of experience in order to understand the individual way of suffering, plus the field theory, this becomes something new. So you can understand the individual expression, the individual suffering as an expression of the field conditions. And this changes completely the therapy, because you don't have to work on the client anymore. You work with and on the forces of the field that it's embodied by you also. So it's a work on yourself. So it changes completely the horizon of therapy. So this was a very, let's say, good and maybe fortunate meeting of the two traditions.
Yeah, I mean, you've been lucky, but it's not only luck, of course, but your ability to combine, but also, wow, lucky that you came across those kind of people
Yes.
also, and we were able to integrate then.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
that, yeah. Mm.
Yes, I guess I was lucky, and also, of course, the narrative is emerging, is is emerging right now with you. But I guess that to have met the people and to have done experiences that were not in the mainstream, always opening new ways, I guess that this helped me to have the courage to go into new ways that were not supported. I remember very well in a meeting of the AGT, probably I said this in the previous interview, I don't remember, but there was a moment when I was chairing the training standard committee, who is the committee in the AGT working on the standards for the training institutes. And I remember that I was astonished how poor was the description of the curriculum for trainees about psychopathology. So I brought this into the general board of the EAGT, proposing to require more in psychopathology for trainee in Gestalt therapists. And many very distinguished and very esteemed colleague said, we don't speak on psychopathology in Gestalt therapy. Psychopathology cannot be part of Gestalt therapy. And so if I wouldn't be supported by this way of opening new ways, even though they are almost invisible at the moment or not supported, I think that I would give up at that moment. So, so I guess that also this attitude helped me, not to stop. Yeah.
And when you said, because you said that quickly, and I would like to understand it right, when you said that there was some lack in Gestalt therapy about this understanding of suffering, and you said that it was it was you meant that Gestalt therapy was not really that much interested in processing this suffering because there was some other ideology behind that at the roots for parents.
I think that psychopathology was not developed, even though the bases are in the foundational book of Peirce, Efferlein, and Gunman, but it was not developed because in the humanistic approaches, there was a kind of ideology. If you think in terms of diagnosis or psychopathology, you are labeling, and this is bad. So, indeed, the first paper that with Michela we published was Diagnosis and Psychopathology in Gestalt Therapy, in order to open a way that we can approach diagnosis and psychopathology without and remaining rooted in Gestalt therapy without labeling people, or let's say to be aware that you cannot make a diagnosis of your client. You can be unaware of the diagnosis that you are making, but you cannot avoid a diagnosis. So you are doing that. And the most risky is to do that without by thinking that you are not doing that. So this was one way. I don't want to enter in the content, but I want to say that it was not developed enough. And so this was very well developed, the experience in psychotic suffering, experiencing personality disorder, experiencing borderline functioning, was very well developed in phenomenological psychopathology. And it was possible to meet the person and not labeling him or her and have this background. So it was not true that if we start to think and to explore and to study psychopathology, we end up in labeling people. It's not true.
Yeah. I guess Gestalt therapy was somehow caught in these polarities. Either we are anti-psychiatry or anti.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
To make to make our identity clear.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it was not developed, even though the bases are even clearly set up in the foundational book. Maybe in some few passages, because our founders were working mainly with neurotic people, so there was not the need to develop other kind of understanding.
Okay, so we need to end now, but I guess we are done. I mean, like with those scope of your great influencers.
Maybe, yes.
I don't know. So thank you very much. It was really, you should write a biography.
Yes, I didn't know before meeting you that I should write a biography. Now I know. And for sure, I want to do that, but I know that I should. Okay.
So so thank you, and and enjoy your time in the mountain, Gianni.
Thank you very much, Camila. Thank you very much. Stay well, and I hope to meet you personally, not too far.
Yeah. Hopefully, yes. Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye bye, Camila. Thank you.